You wake up today, Stephen, and you look around yourself, like, who are you? Who is your identity? And how do you look in the mirror at who Stephen Benedict is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's come up more so than ever right now as I'm beginning to close this chapter of my athletic career and move into my next chapter of life. So you start exploring those things, right? And you find it mostly, I think most athletes can attest to this, is that on our days off or when we have downtime, they become the most agitating to us because we don't know what to do with our time, right? I'm used to training 20, 25 hours a week. So if I have an injury or if I have a down week and that full time training expenditure of energy and everything else gets put on the back burner or it gets turned down, now we're at a loss of, okay, we don't know how to slow down. All right. We're used to going 100 miles an hour. We're used to being on a program, a regimented program, following the things we need to do. And when that's not there, now we have to fill in the gaps. So that particular time becomes a space of, okay, kind of reflection and asking those questions of who I am, what am I going to do next, where am I going to go next, and I think it's not only for athletes, but I think athletes get a heightened sense of it
Mhm.
because they're so out in the field all the time,
And
and
on
it's
public
not
display.
right. It's not a 9 to 5,
Mhm.
right? It's totally different. There's a lot of shifts and pivots and a lot of curves and peaks and valleys for us. Whereas a 9 to 5, and you're working in corporate, you know what you're doing. You're going to work, you have a certain amount of things you have to do on your desk or jobs coming in, whatever. It's like even keeled. It's the same thing every day, right? Now, for us to shift to do that, well, some can do it very well, some can't, depending on what sport you're in. And I've found that one for my sport, track and field, is a very due diligence sport. It's a soul sport. It's not like a team sport. And you have to be very savvy, business savvy. You have to not only be an athlete with a pretty face and be able to be talented in what you do, but you have to also, when you're off the track, you have to be very due diligent on being able to market yourself as a brand, as an image, as a story, adding more value and bringing ROI to companies and brands and sponsors. Because obviously, sponsors are our bread and butter, right?
Mhm.
That's what we need in order to support our training. So I've been very good at that. I am, I went to school for marketing and graphic design, so that's helped a lot. I speak in a lot of circles, that's helped a lot. But in answering your question, I've been exploring what I'm going to do after this, and I've narrowed it down to a couple of things, and they're totally left field. They're totally the opposite direction of anything that any probably buddy would have thought I would go. Marketing is on the radar. I do have opportunities to do that for companies that I've worked with and been, but I'm actually very interested in going for my private pilot's license and going into
Oh,
commercial pilot. So flying the friendly skies, so to say. So that has been on my radar a lot, and it's going to be totally different, but it still gives me. And the reason why I chose that is one, I looked over myself, right? And I looked over the things in which I feel that would help me to keep thriving and feel like I'm still doing something that is exciting and getting me exposure. Go back to that word exposure.
mhm.
I've traveled the world, competed overseas numerous, countless amounts of time here in the States. So I love traveling and I love exposing myself to different cultures. What better way to do that than flying and being able to fly to different countries, different places, see different people, interacting with that? That was a huge piece for me. And I think the longevity that would keep me in there. I've been in the marketing space. I've worked for big companies. When I first came out of college in New York, I worked for Cosmopolitan magazine, doing great layouts in their magazines, other magazines. Hated it. Hated being in a cubicle,
Yeah.
hated the atmosphere. It was just not it just didn't fit my model of being on the go and being able to produce or being able to be active in some way. Now, that's not to say I'm still not going to train for something afterwards. The athletic piece is embedded in me, it's a seed. So I probably might go back to martial arts and go back to judo and compete there for a while, but it'll be more casual. It'll be more of self discipline and just a platform in that. But I think it's just a matter of shifting gears and seeing what pieces you can still carry with you from what your base is.
And I'm glad you said just that. That's what my head is thinking. The pieces that you can carry with you. Excuse me. Because I think to somebody listening right now who's going through that kind of that identity thought in their head and either out walking right now or just thinking about what's kind of going on in their life, you are the best example of not being identified by a thing. Like your
Mhm.
life, those identities you've carried throughout your life from birth, if I may say that, up until your age now, like you have a lot of. If you look at it in the perspective of a book, which I know you've written,
Mhm.
those chapters are your different lives. And you said your life changed every 3 to 5, 7 years, right? And you're the best example of an identity that's constantly changing, where one day you may wake up as a pilot in the friendly skies, right? That,
Right.
that new identity, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
finding, and you've clearly, and so what strikes me again with you is that you've clearly found a way to embrace that you've empowered yourself to embrace that struggle or that transition. You're constantly transitioning, Stephen.
Mhm. Yeah, it's definitely like you said, it is a struggle. It's a struggle for athletes. Athletes are a rare breed, right? Especially when you're competing and you're operating at a very high level. It's very hard to put down the sword, right? It's
Yes.
hard to put it down and understand, okay, you know what? I've had enough, or I can't do this anymore, or I need to move on, right? There's a space, and that's humbling, right? And you have to be able to accept that, but that doesn't mean that you need to be somebody totally different, right? And that doesn't mean that you can't enjoy the rest of your life in something that you never thought would even be on the radar. And that's why I say is look at the things that you enjoy and what you currently do and try to transition some of those things into what you're going to do next. And if you have some of those pieces, that transition will become almost seamless and you'll enjoy what you're doing. You'll probably be taking a lot less of a beating than what we do as athletes now. So your energy levels will probably skyrocket and you'll be able to maintain probably more so than most because of your athletic base. And I say this because this is personal experiences. Some of the things I've put myself through, not only on the track, but off the track in my darkest periods of times through alcohol and drugs and abuse in that space, is the only reason I got through that is because I was so healthy and because I've trained at such a high level. That is like a God given. I look back at that all the time. There's like those things, like the health and wellness piece and those structural pieces, they'll last forever and they'll carry on for you forever. Your transitions are not the transitions are not like you're going like it's your death march, right? And I think we get scared about that. I think athletes especially get scared about that. It's God, man, I'm not going to be looked as an athlete. Like we're looking at it from a standpoint of what we're going to lose, like our star and our fame and how the public looks at us, right? We put too much weight on that instead of, hey, what is going to make me most happy and what is going to make me thrive into the next chapter? Because then when that happens, other things will gravitate towards it that you're not expecting.
Mhm, mhm. It's the idolization, right?
Mm.
It's that adulation, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there's a very simplistic kind of downgrade, and it's a tough thing. It's a very tough thing when, especially for guys, when they feel like their ego is taking a hit. And when we're able to disconnect from that and be like, look, I don't care. Like now I'm able to enjoy life for a while instead of having to worry about, and yes, like some of these other things you're going to have to still worry about and still like be due diligent about is like your diet and your health and doing those checkups and things like that. But overall wise, as far as the longevity of things, you're probably going to take a skyrocket approach in which you're not waking up feeling like a truck hit you, which I've woken up so many times in my life, and all of these things, and start enjoying like your wife, your family, your kids. And that's where the shifts happen. And yes, you're still going to be known as an athlete, but you just don't have to be in front of the camera anymore. Or you can utilize that and utilize your story and your base and build other pieces off of that. That if you need that piece to still live, then you have books and you have things like I would love my story to come out and to be put into searching and looking into documentary pieces right now. No, but a space in which, again, I want to approach it in which, yes, the story is about me and it's my baseline, but the overall message is not about me. It's more about hope and thriving and being able to attack certain situations and stuff. So the narrative is there, but the kind of forefront is not about me.
You're using your story to stand at the door and open it up and say, "Hey, everybody, here's my story. I'm telling it. Those of you that want to join me and share yours and be a part of it, and I'm happy to be the catalyst. I'm happy to be the guy that's going to stand up and bear himself up here. And those that want to join me, great. I welcome you." That's really what you're saying, isn't it, Stephen?
Yeah, no, I just there's a time and a space for standing in the light, and there's a time and a space and
Yes.
standing on the side of the light and allowing other people to step into it a bit out of their kind of dark walk.